To all the king's men, I am writing to you about an enemy of the East India Trading Company. 13 years ago, the pirate Captain Jack Sparrow made an agreement with Davy Jones. Jones gave a ship, the Black Pearl, to Sparrow. Sparrow agreed after 13 years to give up his soul and join Jones's men on the Flying Dutchman. But another pirate, Barbossa, stole the pearl. With the help of William Turner and Elizabeth Swan, the daughter of Port Royal's governor, Sparrow tried to get the Black Pearl back. He succeeded when he killed Barbossa on Isla de Muerta. Elizabeth Swan is also our enemy. James Norrington, a British officer, wanted to marry her, but she fell in love with William Turner. When Norrington failed to catch Sparrow, he lost his job. Will Turner's father, Bootstrap Bill, was a pirate on the Pearl. He is now a prisoner on the Flying Dutchman, and must work for Davy Jones forever. Sparrow went to Isla Cruces to find Jones's heart. Jones has to take orders from the person who has his heart. But James Norrington found it, and is now a British admiral. Without the heart, Sparrow could not fight Jones's monster, the Kraken. He tried to escape, but Elizabeth Swan tied him to the Black Pearl. The Kraken destroyed the ship and Sparrow. Turner, Swan, and Sparrow's men then went to Tia Dalma. She brought Barbossa back from the dead to find Sparrow in Davy Jones's locker. Captain Jack Sparrow is still dangerous. The East India Trading Company must find him and stop him. Admiral Bratton. From high above the ship's deck, a pirate looked across the ocean. He saw nothing except the 2 ships that they traveled with. The Caribbean was calm. Everything was quiet. So why did he feel so worried? He looked again. This time he could see something. Was a ship sailing toward them? Worse, was it an East India Trading Company ship? He knew about the company agents. They killed pirates. The company wanted to destroy every pirate who sailed in the Caribbean, and on every ocean across the world. The pirate decided to call to the captain, but then he saw a dark shape below the water next to the ship. "Captain!" he shouted, but it was too late. The shape came up out of the water. It was something from the pirate's darkest dreams. It was the Flying Dutchman. The Dutchman fired her cannon as she broke through the water. The pirates on all 3 ships tried to fire their cannon, but the Dutchman was too fast, too close, too big. The attack ended very quickly. There was smoke above the burning boats, and the bodies of dead pirates in the water. The Dutchman sailed through untouched. Nothing could stop her. There was another ship on the ocean, an East India Trading Company ship, the Endeavour, carrying Lord Cutler Beckett, Admiral James Norrington, and Governor Weatherby Swan. In the captain's room of the Dutchman, Davy Jones played his piano sadly. He lifted one finger to his eye and discovered a tear. Above his room, Admiral Norrington and Lord Beckett were coming onto the ship with some soldiers. Some of the men threw a large wooden box onto the deck of the Dutchman. It was their job to guard that box. Inside it was Davy Jones's living heart. Lord Beckett smiled. "I've waited for a long time to be here," he thought. "Jones is now under my command. His is the fastest ship on the oceans. Nobody can kill him until they have his heart." Many years before, after Davy Jones's true love broke his heart, Jones cut it out. He put the heart in a wooden box and hid it on Isla Cruces. Lord Beckett spent a lot of time searching for the box. He sent Will Turner to find Jack Sparrow's compass. This compass pointed to the thing that you wanted most. Beckett wanted it to take him to Davy Jones's heart. The heart was found, but not in the way that Beckett planned. Will, his girlfriend Elizabeth, and Jack reached Isla Cruces before Beckett. Norrington, then without a job, was with them. He stole Davy Jones's heart from the others and gave it to Beckett. Immediately, Beckett made Norrington an admiral. "I didn't get the compass," Beckett thought, "but I have Davy Jones's heart, and the Flying Dutchman. Now I and the East India Trading Company can command the oceans. Jack Sparrow's ship, the Black Pearl, is the only ship that can fight the Dutchman. But the Pearl is at the bottom of the ocean." Jones walked onto the deck of the Dutchman. "Go away, all of you, and take that with you," he shouted, pointing at the wooden box. "I refuse to have that box on my ship." "I'm sorry to hear that," Lord Beckett said coldly, "because it's staying here. I have your heart, so you will work for me." "I'm the captain of the Dutchman," Jones said angrily. "This is not your world now, Jones," Beckett replied. "I am your commander." Governor Swan stepped angrily up to the two men. "When you destroyed those pirate ships," he said to Davy Jones, "was my daughter on one of them? She was searching for Will and Jack. I have to find her before she is killed as a pirate." Jones turned to Swan. "Your daughter is dead. She was pulled under the ocean with the Black Pearl by my Kraken. Didn't Lord Beckett tell you?" He smiled. Swan looked at Beckett. His face was pale. "Did you lie to me?" he asked. "Is Elizabeth dead?" Norrington was placing the key in the lock of the wooden box when Swan suddenly pulled him around. Swan took a sword from the nearest soldier. Then he opened the box and lifted the sword above Jones's heart. "No!" Jones shouted. "If you kill the heart, then your heart must take its place, and you will be captain of the Dutchman." Governor Swan stopped. He didn't want to take Jones's place and live forever on this ship, but he wanted to stop Lord Beckett. He turned again to the box, but Norrington held his arm and took the sword from him. "Do you think Elizabeth wanted this?" he asked. He took Governor Swan away. Beckett, Jones, and Mercer, Beckett's assistant, watched them leave. "You can go, Captain," Beckett said to Davy Jones. "I want to fight him," Jones thought, "but I can't win." The Dutchman continued to sail across the bright blue Caribbean waters, ready to bring more death to the next pirate ship. Lord Beckett and the East India Trading Company had the heart of Davy Jones, so no pirate was safe. "Soon I will destroy every pirate in the Caribbean," Lord Beckett thought happily. Chapter 2. The Pirate Lord of Singapore. Lord Cutler Beckett was wrong. Elizabeth Swan was still alive. She was halfway across the world, looking for the Pirate Lord of Singapore. Months earlier, when the Kraken was searching for Jack, Elizabeth tricked Jack onto the Black Pearl with a kiss. Then she tied him to the side of the ship, so she and Will could escape from the monster. She watched the Black Pearl and Jack Sparrow go to the bottom of the ocean. Later, she felt bad about his death. She went with Will and Jack's sailors to see Tia Dalma. Tia Dalma was a friend of Jack's, and she could see into the future. She was a mysterious woman. "You can bring Jack Sparrow back to the world of the living," Tia Dalma told them, "but you'll need the help of an old enemy, Captain Barbossa. Jack killed Barbossa, but I brought him back from the dead. He can help us to bring back Jack, too." Now, Elizabeth and Barbossa were in a small boat in Singapore. Elizabeth looked across the city. It was a dark and shadowy place, full of secrets, pirates, and sharp knives. She tied the boat to a wooden bridge. Suddenly, a man and his 2 guards stepped out of the darkness. He was tall and strong, with cold, hard eyes and a sharp sword. He was Tai Huang, second in command to Shao Feng, the Pirate Lord of Singapore. "Your commander knows that we are here," Barbossa said to Tai Huang. "You're Captain Barbossa," Tai Huang said. "Yes," Barbossa agreed, "and this is Elizabeth Swan, and Shao Feng has promised to protect us." Mercer and some East India Trading Company agents were passing. Huang waited until they went around a corner. Then he said, "Follow me." Not far away, 2 company agents were guarding an old broken bridge. Captain Jack Sparrow's sailors were below them in the water. Ragetti lifted his head. His good eye moved, while his wooden eye looked straight in front. Pinto, Gibbs, Cotton, and Marty were behind him. They swam to a metal gate, then they waited. They were going to Shao Feng's hiding place to help Elizabeth and Barbossa. There was a strange noise. The company agents jumped to their feet. A woman came out of the darkness, pushing a large wooden box on noisy wheels. She smiled and showed a mouthful of black teeth. was Tia Dalma. The noise of the wheels was loud and hid sounds from below. The pirates started to cut through the metal gate. Tai Huang took Barbossa and Elizabeth through an old bathhouse to Xiao Feng's hiding place. Elizabeth touched Barbossa's arm. "Have we heard anything from Will?" she asked quietly. Barbossa shook his head. "No, he can protect himself," he said. "But you, be polite when you're with Xiao Feng." The pirate lord of Singapore was stepping out of his bath. Elizabeth looked at his face. His eyes were dark and cold. This man was dangerous. "Captain Xiao Feng," Barbossa said smoothly. Xiao Feng looked up. "Captain Barbossa," he said, "welcome to Singapore. I understand that you want something from me." "I need a ship and some men," Barbossa replied. Xiao Feng looked at Barbossa and smiled. "That's strange," he said. "You want a ship, and today, not far from here, a thief tried to steal one from me." Xiao Feng walked quickly across the room to an old man who was holding some maps. "These maps show the way to the world of the dead," he said softly. He watched their faces. "Will your adventure take you there?" Suddenly, he gave a sign to 2 guards near one of the baths. The guards pulled someone out from under the water. Their prisoner was Will Turner. Chapter 3. Captain Barbossa's Plan. Will Turner was very unhappy. There was something that Elizabeth did not know. He loved Elizabeth, but months before he saw her kissing Jack on the Pearl. Will hated Jack, but he also needed him. Will wanted to save his father from the Flying Dutchman, so he needed the Black Pearl, the fastest ship on the ocean. But now Will was Xiao Feng's prisoner. The pirate lord pulled him by his hair across the floor to Barbossa and Elizabeth. "This is the thief," he said angrily. "Do you know him?" "No," Elizabeth and Barbossa both said at the same time. Xiao Feng studied their faces. "No?" He picked up a large knife and touched Will's face with its sharp edge. "Then I'll kill him." Elizabeth moved toward Will. "You're afraid," Xiao Feng said. "Now I know that you and this man are working together." "Xiao Feng," Barbossa said quickly. "I had no idea." Xiao Feng looked at Barbossa carefully. "You want to go to Davy Jones's locker?" he said. "Why?" It was time to be completely honest. Pirates were not often honest. Barbossa pulled a silver coin out of his pocket and threw it to Xiao Feng. "A piece of 8, the pirate lord said quietly. There was a worried look on his face. "Yes," Barbossa answered. "It's time to call the Brethren Court." "The court hasn't met in my lifetime," Xiao Feng said. "And when it last met, it ended badly. My father told me." "But the time before that, it helped us to take command of the oceans, didn't it?" Barbossa said. Barbossa was talking about the story of Calypso, the goddess of the ocean. The first Brethren Court, 9 pirate lords, caught Calypso and turned her from a goddess into an ordinary woman. She couldn't send storms to destroy them. From that day, the oceans belonged to the pirates. Barbossa's voice became more serious. And now the East India Trading Company wants to command the oceans. Lord Cutler Beckett is bad for us all. Xiao Feng shook his head. What can any of us do against the company? Elizabeth couldn't stay quiet. You can fight, she shouted. Everyone turned and looked at her. You are Xiao Feng, the pirate lord of Singapore. Do you want the company to destroy every pirate in the world? Aren't you going to do something? The pirate lord looked carefully at her. Elizabeth Swan, he said, you are an interesting woman. He smiled at her. Then he turned to Barbossa. But you haven't answered my question. What do you want from Davy Jones's locker? Jack Sparrow, said a voice from across the room. Will Turner shook the wet hair away from his face and stood up straighter. He wasn't afraid of the pirate lord. He's one of the pirate lords, Will said. Xiao Feng was clearly angry at the sound of Jack Sparrow's name. I hate Jack Sparrow. I don't want to see him alive again. Jack Sparrow holds one of the 9 pieces of 8, Barbossa said. He didn't give it to anyone before he died. So we must go and get him. He stopped as swords were suddenly pushed up through holes in the floor by Jack Sparrow's pirates. Elizabeth took 2 swords and threw one across the room to Will. He caught it in one hand and cut himself free. Then there was a loud noise and the windows broke. The room was full of East India Trading Company agents. Chapter 4. The Escape from Singapore. The pirates all turned to fight the agents together. Jack's men came up through a hole in the floor and joined the fight. The room was full of smoke and the noise of swords and guns. Elizabeth saw Beckett's assistant, Mercer. He came into the bathhouse with a crowd of soldiers behind him. There were too many of them. The pirates climbed the walls of the building and escaped into the street outside. They ran, fighting for their lives. A wall fell down, knocking Mercer into a shadowy corner. From there, he saw something very interesting. Xiao Feng was holding a knife to Will Turner's neck. It's strange, isn't it? Xiao Feng said angrily. The company agents find me on the same day that you arrive in Singapore. I didn't bring them here, Will replied. He broke free from Xiao Feng and pulled out his own knife. Do you want to make an agreement with Beckett? He asked. Then you need Jack Sparrow. I can help you to find him. You tricked Barbossa, Xiao Feng said. You want to trick Jack Sparrow. You'll try to trick me. They can't help me, Will said. You can. Xiao Feng understood. I'll kill you if you trick me, he said. They put down their knives, and Xiao Feng handed Will the maps to the world of the dead. Will disappeared into the darkness. Mercer followed him. Elizabeth and Barbossa escaped from the fighting, ran to the waterside, and found Will. You have the maps, Barbossa shouted happily. And I have a ship and some sailors, Will said. He pointed at Tai Huang behind him. Where's Xiao Feng? Elizabeth asked. He'll help us to escape. Then he'll meet us at Shipwreck Cove, Will answered. Elizabeth was surprised. "Why does Xiao Feng want to help us?" she asked herself. "Maybe now he understands that all pirates are in danger from the East India agents." "Come this way," Tai Huang said. "Be quick." Tia Dalma, Pintel, Ragetti, and Cotton also came out of the smoke, and together they ran after Tai Huang. From the shadows, Mercer smiled. "I have information that Lord Beckett will be very interested in," he thought. "The pirates are meeting at Shipwreck Cove. Soon we will destroy them all." From the Hai Peng, Will watched Singapore burn. His thoughts were far away, on his agreement with Xiao Feng. "I want to tell Elizabeth, but she won't understand. And I don't understand her feelings for Jack. We both have secrets now." From another part of the ship, Elizabeth Swan also watched the fire. "Xiao Feng can't stay here," she said softly. "Will he meet us at Shipwreck Cove?" Tia Dalma stepped forward. "I cannot say," she said. "There's something in the ocean that the bravest pirates fear." "The Flying Dutchman," Elizabeth thought. "It's there, somewhere below the waves. We must find Jack Sparrow. The pirates must work together against Davy Jones and the East India Trading Company. If we don't, then we will all die." The Hai Peng was sailing through an icy ocean, close to the edge of the earth, between worlds. The water was dark and stormy, and the snow was falling thick and fast. Will studied Xiao Feng's strange maps. Circles moved and turned inside circles. There were poems written around their edges. Will read one of the poems again. "Over the edge, back, over again, sun up, sun down, a green light." "Barbossa!" he called. "What does this mean?" Barbossa smiled, unworried. "Have you seen the green light, Mr. Gibbs?" he asked the pirate. Gibbs smoothed his grey beard. "It happens sometimes," he said to Will. "When the sun goes down, there's a green light in the sky. Some people never see it. Some say that it's a sign that a soul is coming back to this world from the dead," Pintel said. Barbossa laughed. "Don't worry, Mr. Turner," he said happily. "We'll find the way to the world of the dead. That isn't the problem. The problem is getting back." Will didn't feel much better. Later that night, Elizabeth stood on the deck and looked down into the water. "Can we bring Jack home from the world of the dead?" she thought. "And will he forgive me for his death?" Will came and stood silently next to her. He didn't look at her. "I still love Will, but we're strangers," thought Elizabeth. After a minute, she walked away. Suddenly, Will heard a strange sound. "Barbossa!" he called. "Can you hear that noise?" Barbossa listened carefully. With a smile he said, "Yes, these are the waters. We're lost now." The ship was turning. Something was pulling it toward the noise. But Barbossa wasn't afraid. He was laughing. "Quickly!" Will shouted, waking his men. The pirates ran on deck, and Will climbed high into the ship's sails. Will saw a white line of high water in front of them. They couldn't go back, and they couldn't sail around it. "Turn the ship's wheel!" he shouted. But Barbossa's voice was louder. "No! Go straight!" Will pushed him away and turned the wheel hard. The Haipeng turned, but it was still moving toward the line. "There's a waterfall in front of us," Elizabeth realized. "A waterfall that drops off the edge of the world." Will was still trying to turn the ship's wheel. Barbossa stood behind him, laughing. Elizabeth shook the old pirate. "You'll kill us all!" she cried. The Haipeng turned. For a minute it stayed on the edge of the waterfall. The pirates looked down into the endless black nothingness below. Then the ship fell over the edge. All the pirates, except Barbossa, screamed with fear. The ship crashed down, 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 into the darkness. Chapter 5. Captain Jack Returns. Captain Jack Sparrow stood on the Black Pearl. The ship's sails didn't move. There was no wind, and the Pearl was sitting in an ocean of sand. The sun burned down from a hot blue sky. Jack was alone in Davy Jones's locker. He was dead, and it was not a good feeling. He climbed down onto the sand. He tried to push the Pearl with his shoulder, but of course it didn't move. He saw some smooth, round stones. Picking one up, he threw it across the sand. He was very surprised when the stone came back to him. It stopped next to his boot and broke into pieces like an egg. Inside was a small crab. Jack threw some sand at the crab, and it ran away. He lay on the sand and closed his eyes. He didn't see the crab move forward again. It studied the ship. Then it ran to the other stones. Time passed. Suddenly, a shadow passed across Jack's face, and he opened his eyes. Something was moving. It was the Black Pearl. Thousands of crabs were carrying it on their backs across the sand. "Interesting," said Jack. On another beach, the Haipeng lay in pieces. Pinto and Ragetti came out of the water first. Elizabeth, Will, Gibbs, and Tia Dalma were close behind, with Cotton, Marty, Tai Huang and his men, and finally, Barbossa. Gibbs looked up and down the long, empty beach. "This is a terrible place," he said. Elizabeth pushed her wet hair away from her face. She looked worried, too. "I can't see Jack," she said. "I can't see anyone." "He's here, somewhere," said Barbossa. Tia Dalma smiled. "Jack is nearer than you think," she said. Elizabeth looked past Tia Dalma. Something was moving across the sand. It was the Black Pearl. Captain Jack Sparrow stood proudly by the ship's wheel. Thousands of crabs carried the Pearl closer. Then they dropped it into the water. Jack waved to his men. "Gibbs, Pinto, and you, the man with one eye," he cried. "Did the Kraken kill you too?" Elizabeth ran up to Jack and put her arms around him. "I'm so sorry," she said in a low voice. "I'm so glad you're all right." But Jack pushed her away. "Tia Dalma, how nice to see you." "How are you, Jack Sparrow?" Barbossa's voice came from the back of the crowd. Jack stopped. He turned and saw his old enemy. "Barbossa!" he shouted loudly. "I haven't seen you for a long time, since—" "Isla de Muerta, remember?" Barbossa said. "You shot me." "Yes," Jack said nervously. "I remember." "We came to help you," Barbossa said. "That's very kind of you," Jack said. "But I have a ship, and you don't. You need help, not me." Barbossa pointed at the pearl. "My ship is there," he said. Jack looked at the ocean. "I can't see it," he said. "Is it hidden somewhere behind the pearl?" Barbossa was very angry. He wanted to attack Jack, but Will stopped him. "Jack, listen," Will said urgently. "Cutler Beckett has Davy Jones's heart. He commands the Flying Dutchman." "He wants to command the oceans," Elizabeth added. "We're calling the Brethren Court," Tia Dalma told him. "Yes, Jack," Gibbs said. "The world needs you." "And you need sailors," Will said. He pointed at the pirates. Jack studied them. "Do I want to sail with you?" he asked. "3 of you tried to kill me." He stopped in front of Elizabeth. "And 1 of you succeeded." Will was surprised. What was Jack saying? Did Elizabeth kill him? Jack smiled. "She hasn't told you," he said. He turned to Tia Dalma. "All right, you can come with me. Gibbs, Marty, Cotton, you're okay too." He didn't speak to Barbossa, Will, or Elizabeth. He walked up to Tai Huang. "Who are you?" "Tai Huang," said the tall pirate calmly. He pointed to the Singapore pirates. "These are my men." "Who do you work for?" Jack asked. "The person with the most money," Tai Huang answered. "I have a ship," Jack offered. "Then I'll work for you," Tai Huang said. The pirates jumped into the water and swam out to the pearl. Jack pulled out his compass and looked at it. But it wasn't working in this strange and mysterious place. "Oh, Jack!" said a voice behind him. Jack turned around. Barbossa held up Xiao Feng's old maps. "Which way are you going, Jack?" he asked with a smile. "Those maps will take us back to the world of the living." Jack thought, "I need Barbossa on the pearl." Chapter 6. Back to the Real World. The sun shone on the blue ocean, but there were dark shapes below the water. This was the ocean in Davy Jones's locker. It was a strange place. Barbossa was happy because he was back on the pearl. He started to give orders to the pirates, but then he heard Jack's voice. Jack was giving them orders too. "The captain gives orders on a ship," Jack explained. "The captain is giving orders," Barbossa said. "My ship," Jack said, "so I'm the captain." As Barbossa and Jack fought, Will Turner climbed down into the rooms below. He found Elizabeth sitting alone in a dark corner. Her face was wet. Was she crying? "You left Jack for the Kraken?" he said. Elizabeth stood up. "Will, I killed him, so I had to save him." "You didn't tell me," Will said angrily. You thought I loved him." "You don't talk to me. How can I believe you?" Elizabeth looked up into his eyes, the eyes of the man that she loved. "You can't," she said softly. Without another word, she disappeared from the room. On the Pearl's first night in the darkness between worlds, there were stars above and below them. The pirates were worried. "Which way, Captain?" Gibbs asked. At the word captain, both Barbossa and Jack turned around and ran. They fought over the ship's wheel. Pintel and Ragetti were looking over the side of the ship. There were a lot of bodies in the water below. Old men, young women, sailors, small children. The water was filled with dead bodies. Tia Dalma walked over to them. She looked out at the ocean. "Where is Davy Jones?" she asked softly. "Calypso gave him a job. He had to take dead people from the ocean to the other world. Then, every 10 years, he could come onto the land to be with his true love." Tia Dalma shook her head. "Davy Jones was a man, but now he is a monster." She looked at the bodies. "Poor souls. Now they must find their own way to the other world." Will and Elizabeth joined them. A lot of small boats were coming toward them. Gibbs pointed a gun at them, but Will stopped him. He knew who or what they were. Suddenly, Elizabeth saw someone that she knew. "My father!" she shouted. "Father! Here! Look here!" Jack joined the group. He touched her shoulder. "Elizabeth," he said, "we're not back in the world of the living yet." Slowly she understood. They were the only living people in the land of the dead. "Father!" she cried. Her voice was full of sadness. "I didn't say goodbye to you." In the boat, Governor Swan lifted his head at the sound of his daughter's voice. "Elizabeth," he said, "are you dead?" "No," Elizabeth told him. "I think I am," Governor Swan said. "No," Elizabeth said. "Come onto our ship. Come back with us." She threw a line, but the governor didn't take it. "There was a wooden box," her father told her slowly, "and a heart. If you destroy the heart, you take Jones's place as captain of the Dutchman." Elizabeth didn't understand her father's words, but Will and Jack did. This was important information. Governor Swan's boat moved away. "Elizabeth," he said, "I'm proud of you. I'll give your love to your mother." Elizabeth called, "The line! Take it!" But it was too late. The line fell into the water. Elizabeth started to climb out of the ship. Tia Dalma spoke angrily. "She must not leave. We cannot lose her." Will pulled Elizabeth back onto the deck. He looked over her shoulder at Tia Dalma. "Can we help him?" he asked quietly. The woman shook her head. "No," she said. Morning came. and the sun passed slowly across the sky. The Pearl was going nowhere. There was no wind and no drinking water on the ship. The sailors were very thirsty. Tia Dalma came up to Will. "We must escape from this ocean before night, or we shall stay here for the rest of time." Will went to Xiao Feng's maps and looked at them again. Jack was already there, studying the mysterious circles and words. Barbossa was at the ship's wheel. He didn't look worried. Will read the strange poem again. Over the edge, back, over again, sun up, sun down, a green light. Jack moved some of the circles on the maps, and suddenly saw some new words. Up is down. Up is down, Jack repeated. Then he understood. Sun goes down, sun comes up, Jack said. Up is down. He jumped to his feet and pointed across the water. Over there, he shouted. The pirates all ran across the deck to the left side of the ship. They couldn't see anything. Suddenly, Jack turned and ran to the right side of the ship. There! It moved! He called. The pirates ran after him, and the ship moved with their weight. Elizabeth saw Jack turn quickly again. Over there! He shouted, running back to the left side. What is Jack doing? Barbossa thought. He went to the maps, saw the message, Up is down, and suddenly he understood. Untie everything on the decks, he shouted. The ship turned upside down, and everyone went under the water. Pirates held onto the sides of the ship. Will saw the maps in the water and reached for them. Then they saw a green light. There was a loud noise, and water fell away from the Pearl. Everything crashed back onto the deck. The ship was sailing on the top of the ocean again. But this was not the cold and empty ocean of the world of the dead. Here the sun was coming up, and the sky was getting light. We've escaped from Davy Jones's locker, Jack said. We're finally back in the real world.